Welcome to the Elite Dangerous Universe, Commander. My name is Drew Wager, one of the official authors who contributed to the narrative of the game. If you're just starting out and want a guide to the background lore, you've come to the right place. This is the lore of the Thargoids. The Thargoids are typically described as an aggressive insectoid extraterrestrial life form. This description falls short of their true nature in a number of respects. Much of the established narrative of the Thargoids paints them as a vicious and indefatigable enemy of humanity, which serves the needs of both the military-industrial complex of the major powers, the needs of the populist politicians, and also trigger-happy commanders to whom, as they pithily state, the only good bug is a dead bug. In truth, the Thargoids are rather more nuanced. Dates for humanity's first encounter with this intriguing race are difficult to establish. However, sources state that the first encounter with Thargoids occurred in the year 3125. However, there are other records dating from the middle of the 29th century, with various specific dates including 2849 and 2851 being cited. This coincides approximately with the era of commoditized space travel, and it seems reasonable to assume that as humanity spread out into the void, encounters with other life forms were more likely to occur. In this era, it was considered that humanity was, almost certainly, the only sapient species in the galaxy, so contact with an alien spacefaring race came as something of a shock, and was widely disbelieved, despite many ships inexplicably going missing. Galcop reportedly triangulated the reports and noted that they clustered towards the Pleiades star cluster. Unfortunately, most of these records were lost in the collapse of Galcop. The earlier non-official reports claimed that the Thargoids were encountered in the Véliès star system. Reports suggest the New Africa colony in this system encountered Thargoid vessels, and an aggressive federal response was organised, with federal warships locating the alien vessels, opening fire upon them, and destroying them with no attempt to communicate. Official federal sources claim these reports are a fabrication, pointing to the fact that there is no star system called Véliès on the galactic map. Today, there are two New Africa colonies, one in the Zelada system and one in Ypsilon Indi. Both lay claim to being the Thargoid first contact point, but only for the tourism benefits this now brings. There is little to substantiate either of their claims. Regardless, Thargoid hostility to humanity is noted from this time forward. 8-sided Thargoid vessels were encountered by human pilots and were seen to attack on sight with no communication or provocation, which has been a constant ever since. Victories against the alien vessels were few. Thargoid ships were reported to be large, powerful, swift, and deadly, with shield strength and weaponry of greater power and range than the typical human-piloted vessels of the time. In particular, Thargoid vessels appear to operate using some kind of reactionless space drive. Footage shows the alien ships had no traditional exhaust vectoring as do human vessels, and appeared to be able to move contrary to Newton's second law of motion, though this has never been fully established. Further reports indicated that the Thargoids had significantly more flexible and advanced grasp on the concept of hyperspace travel. Accounts suggested that Thargoid vessels were able to hover in witch space and intercept human vessels travelling through hyperspace, ambushing them and forcing them out into normal space before attempting to destroy them. Thargoid vessels were merciless in combat, never standing down until they were destroyed. They also demonstrated remarkable levels of automation, being able to deploy small supplementary craft, quickly nicknamed Thargons by the pilot community, able to act autonomously and join the attack, often easily overwhelming even combined human vessel firepower. The historical records of Galcop appear to indicate that their naval fleets were engaged in a series of war zones against the Thargoids, though the location of these zones remains unclear. Certainly, Galcop registered pilots were fully aware of the Thargoid threat, as their pilot manuals warned of the danger of alien vessels, claiming that pilots should consider a Thargoid vessel an elite-level threat. Propaganda of the time even suggested that Thargoid pilots had their fear glands removed. Technology was certainly spurred on by the perceived threat, and it was suggested that ECM and improved hyperspace capability was reverse engineered from captured Thargoid wrecks. Overall, Thargoid technology was overwhelmingly superior to anything humanity was able to field at the time. This conflict continued for many decades, though the Thargoid motivation was unclear. They didn't appear to be attempting to gain any particular territory, and their goals remained elusive. Then, abruptly, they disappeared. The detail of how this conflict was won, now known as the First Thargoid War, will be the subject of an upcoming article, as its complexity warrants a more detailed overview. Suffice to say, humanity engineered a deadly virus capable of destroying not only the Thargoid hyperdrives, but the Thargoids themselves. A clandestine organisation known as the Intergalactic Naval Reserve Arm, or INRA, was responsible for the capture of live Thargoid specimens, operational vessels, and the resultant research. The virus was supremely successful. As a result, the Thargoids were gone from human space by the year 3151, presumed eradicated, and knowledge of them was deliberately suppressed from this point forward, until by the 34th century they were considered a space myth or a baseless rumour by most. Scattered reports from the Alliance around the year 3250 indicate that missions were planned to ascertain where any remaining Thargoids had retreated to. Some accounts have a pilot returning in a captured Thargoid vessel, but these have not been substantiated. Notably, INRA itself was disbanded shortly afterwards, in the year 3253. In 3301, strange artefacts were discovered in the vicinity of the Pleiades star cluster. These artefacts were organic in nature and had the odd effect of interfering with human technology, often shutting it down or otherwise rendering it inoperable. It was later found that these objects were Thargoid in origin. Alongside the artefacts, curious growths nicknamed barnacles were found on the surface of some planets in the region. Organic wreckage was also discovered. The purpose of all these finds remained a mystery for a period of time. On January 5th, 3303, Commander D.P. Sayer became the first human to contact a Thargoid in the present era. His ship was snatched out of witch space, a process which came to be known as hyperdiction, and subjected to some kind of analysis by a vast eight-sided vessel, organic in nature and clearly reminiscent of the artefacts, barnacles and organic wreckage. Sayer's ship was easily disabled by the Thargoid, which took no other action than a scan, and then proceeded to rapidly depart using a hitherto unknown form of hyperspace manipulation. Subsequently, many other vessels reported similar encounters, some reporting that the vessels interacted directly with the barnacles, perhaps for refueling or similar reprovisioning. And so began the Second Thargoid War. By April of the same year, Thargoid vessels had been implicated in attacks on federal convoys, and their identity had been comprehensively confirmed by Professor Palin, leader of the Palin Institute, a body created in 3301 to study the aliens. The attacks showed that the battlecruiser-class vessels of the Federal Navy were alarmingly vulnerable to Thargoid weaponry. Independent pilots also found their own weaponry to be effectively useless against Thargoid ships, with the Thargoid vessels able to shut down any human craft with some kind of EMP effect. In response, an organisation called Aegis was formed in mid-3303 with a view to developing new offensive and defensive technologies. AX-class weaponry was a result, which has since provided some parity with the Thargoid capabilities. Thargoid vessels appeared to increase in strength and durability in response, with various different types, collectively known as interceptors, being noted. The war became an invasion during this period, as Thargoids took to attacking space station and making inroads in territory claimed by both the Federation and the Empire. Throughout 3304, the Thargoids advanced into human-occupied space, and by the end of the year had come within striking distance of Sol itself. Then, as before, they retreated. The Second War appeared to have spluttered to a halt in an uneasy and unconfirmed truce. Thargoids can still be found in the Pleiades star cluster region, which they appear to consider theirs. Towards the end of 3306, they have also been found to be present in the Coalsack and Witchhead Nebula regions, mounting significant attacks on human installations in the area. Once more, independent pilots have responded to the assault. It is still not clear what motivates the Thargoids. Their attack on the core worlds ended with no significant tactical gains achieved. Their technological superiority would seem to give them the ability to utterly vanquish humanity, but, fortunately for us, they seem disinclined to do so. They do not appear to have a territory acquisition strategy in the traditional sense, but do seem to focus their attention on regions of nebulosity. It appears they consider various nebulae locations to be significant, for reasons currently unknown. Outside of these areas, they are unlikely to be encountered. In terms of the Thargoids themselves, very little is actually known. Information is sparse, and not much has been declassified. What is available suggests the Thargoids bear a resemblance to some Earth insects in overall form, with multi-part bodies, chitinous exoskeletons, and a number of jointed legs and arms. Their chemistry is believed to be carbon-based, but using ammonia as a suspension and circulatory mechanism rather than water as in humans. If true, this means that Thargoid physiology will operate at a far lower temperature than would be comfortable for human beings. Ammonia boils at -33 Celsius at 1 bar atmospheric pressure. Normal body temperature for a Thargoid is thus likely to be in the -60 range or below. They are believed to be physically imposing. One leaked report states that low-caliber weapons do no damage to Thargoids, even at point-blank range. They have 6 legs and 2 arms, and are strong enough to dismember a human with only their claws. Thargoids have been known to congregate in regions where ammonia worlds are common. This is, potentially, a source of optimism for future Thargoid-human relations, if a means to dialogue can be established, as the resources that each race require are, for the most part, incompatible with each other, and should allow both races to coexist without strife or competition. Indeed, this may be the only reason that humanity hasn't already been wiped out. Thargoid society appears to be hive-based, perhaps centered around a sacral matriarchal structure, much like Earth insect communities. This may explain how the Thargoids appear to consider individual ships as disposable assets, and they appear to treat individual human vessels in the same manner, but perhaps expect human vessels to act in concert. Our ability to act as individuals may be completely incomprehensible to the Thargoids. As to their longevity, Thargoids have been in space for a very long time indeed. Archaeological research into the vanished civilization known as the Guardians, themselves the subject of an upcoming article, suggests that they were embroiled in a war with the Thargoids, implying the Thargoids have been a spacefaring culture for millions of years. Thargoid vessels, even today, still respond aggressively to the presence of Guardian technology. This, in of itself, is very significant, as it may imply that the Thargoids evolve at a very slow pace, or their evolution has been halted by their own intervention. Thargoid technology is radically different to that used by humanity. Thargoid vessels and structures appear to be grown rather than built, and are an amalgam of organic and inorganic components. It's quite possible there's a blurred line between what is a Thargoid and what is a Thargoid vessel, with the two not necessarily being distinct from each other. Thargoid ships appear to be able to create and utilize hyperspace wormholes to move about at will within systems, and have never needed to use anything analogous to supercruise, giving them a vast strategic advantage over human vessels. Once again, this has led to much speculation on the Thargoids' actual overall goals, as this capability would allow them to completely overwhelm human-occupied space should they wish to do so. The range of Thargoid hyperspace transit is unknown, but it is assumed to be much further than any human vessel. The extent of Thargoid civilization is also unknown. Despite human vessels having reached across the galaxy, Thargoid vessels have only been encountered in small discrete pockets quite near to the core worlds. Given they have been a spacefaring culture for millions of years, this suggests they do not share humanity's need to push outwards and constantly expand. Rumours of a Thargoid homeworld also persist, but have never been substantiated. Further altercations with the Thargoids are likely. We are dealing with an immensely old and vastly more experienced alien intelligence, which does not appear to share much in common with us in terms of understanding, concepts of time or society, desire for dialogue, or overall objectives. They remain an enigma, a brooding menace on the edge of space. Humanity may have been the initial aggressor, and the Thargoids must have very long memories. One thing is certain, we have not heard the last of the Thargoids.